Hi, everyone. This is Rabbi Kerry at Shul. Welcome to Resist Burnout, a 15-minute weekly call to restore, regenerate, and return to who you are. Whatever your background, your personal rituals, practices, religions, this, we hope, will be a space for you. Whether you're calling in every week now, this is your first time calling, or if you're listening later in the week, I know that you know the need for this sort of moment, these 15 minutes. Otherwise, you wouldn't be calling in and listening at all. This past week, many of us have tried to make sense of, rally against, and or come into community in this moment when white nationalists are bolder and seemingly more organized than ever. I hope that each of us has found or is navigating towards a way to move forward in our own power, to dismantle racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, misogyny, and all the systems that sustain white supremacy and empire. I and the Shul team hope that this Resist Burnout call will be one of many way stations for you, moments that sustain you in our work towards freedom and justice and solidarity with one another, even when, especially when it might be hard. By joining today's call on Monday, August 21st, or any other day, you are showing up for yourself, for everyone else who is listening. And we are honored that today, in particular, Rhonda Rosen will be leading us in meditation once again, and that our guest, Tanya Tarr, will be here to share from her experience as a longtime activist. So to name who else is on today's call, so there are people from Texas and Pennsylvania, New York and California, I think Massachusetts and Vermont, perhaps other places too. And there are people on this call working for immigrant rights, for healthcare access, for queer rights, for refugees. There are academics, artists, musicians, peacemakers, troublemakers, politicos, people planning to run for office, consultants, parents, and all of us pursuing the world that we aspire to live in. After this call, whenever you listen to it, whether it's on Monday or another time during the week, I encourage you to post a picture of where you are, of yourself, or of a few words about what's on your heart after listening to today's call. We gather to practice our own helpfulness. We have just this one self and a whole lot of work to do with it. Calling from Pittsburgh, Rhonda Rosen has been a mindfulness meditation practitioner since '73, and she's been leading mindfulness meditation for 10 years. And I'm thrilled that she's back with us this week again. Hi, Rhonda.
Hi, Kerry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have been racking my brain to think of how to use today's eclipse as a metaphor, but it keeps breaking down. The moon eclipses the sun at predictable intervals along a predictable path, and it resolves itself on its own. We are not lost in darkness because the sun and the moon have their independent paths, and it's a temporary occurrence. But this past week, the darkness of hate has been pulled into the daylight for everyone to witness, and it's always been there. I am repeatedly shocked by the American history of hate and menace and violence, which is part of the fabric of our society. And now hate is entrenched at the highest levels of our government. We must keep working for light and love and justice without darkening our own hearts. We cannot afford to be consumed by fear. This is a large order. The effects of trauma are actually inherited genetically. For me, seeing the symbols of hate on banners and flags rattles me to the marrow of my bones, and I must consciously steady myself. This requires the cultivation of skills of emotional self-regulation and the conservation of our own resources. We must ground the energy of fear, and that is what we're doing here with these meditations. We are learning to steady ourselves for the work ahead. We are training for effective action. We must preserve our capacity for generosity of spirit and hope for the future, even as we witness and confront the current menace. So let's practice now. Here we are, and we've decided to take time out from the continual stream of demand I hope you're finding a comfortable position and feel safe enough right now to let down your guard and move inward. And I'm going to ask you this time to please place your feet on the floor as you continue breathing and feeling the breath at the nostrils, neutral and subtle. Here's the inhale, and here's the exhale, and the transition in between. And each time the attention wanders, just bring it back with just enough energy in your attention that it rests so gently on the continuous movement of the breathing. Attending to your breath as if it were the most interesting thing, and there's nothing to control. It's so good to take some time outside of time, no demands or expectations. And if you would, I'd like you to pay particular attention to the end of the exhale. Sometimes the exhale gets truncated by fear or anger. If that's happening, find it interesting and notice if there's emotion embedded there. And if your judgmental mind shows up, notice that too. This breath, just breathing itself. And you can keep the attention at the breath, or if you like, you can allow the attention to move to feel the body. Simply resting here alive from head to toe. Letting the muscles of the face and the eyes and the mouth get soft. The neck and the shoulders. The arms and the hands. Feeling the weight of the arms and the temperature of the hands. And here's the upper back and the chest. In the middle of the back and the abdomen. The trunk of the body breathing. And the hips and the pelvis and the breath moves here too. And you can notice if the end of the exhale is truncated. Where in your body do you feel the retraction, the holding on? It's so interesting. And if you'd like to make an adjustment in the breath, or you can do that, or just let the breath continue to breathe itself. And you can feel the weight of your body just sitting or lying here. And the legs and the feet. The thighs. The knees and the calves. And the ankle and the feet. Feeling the heel. The instep. The ball of the foot. And the top of the foot, each toe. And the weight of the feet on the floor. Feeling the connection between the feet and the floor. Stable. The feet are supported. This is how we're able to stand. The feet are supported. And then returning to the breath, which is still breathing all by itself. And when you open your eyes, notice what you see, shape and light and shadow. Very good. Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you, Rhonda, for helping to ground that energy of fear, for giving us this training to study ourselves so that we might take effective action. I'm really happy that Tanya Tarr is with us today. She is calling in from Austin. At least that's where she lives. I'm not sure if that's where she is right now. I guess she'll let us know. Tanya is an integrative health coach who has supported political candidates, campaigns, and other leaders. My wife really knows her better than I do, and I asked my wife how I should introduce Tanya, and she said Tanya is a fighter, a coach, and an activist. And we're really so honored that she's here with us to share from her experience today. Tanya, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for letting me join this incredible resource for our community. I wanted to talk about something that I started dealing with 4 years ago, and it was adrenal fatigue. And so the way that looked was physically, it was neck and chest pain and chronic exhaustion and brain fog and the whole enchilada. And the doctor's advice for me for my recovery was that I should change jobs. I am in Austin still, and I worked for the teachers union for 6 years. And every time the doctor told me this, I wanted to scream at her. I worked for the teachers union in Texas. This is not a job I do for a paycheck. This is my calling. And so I decided I was going to stubbornly prove these doctors wrong and made a bunch of radical changes in my life. And it started with my diet. I knew that sugar was a trigger. So I started by taking that out. And eventually I took out wheat, dairy, and alcohol. I did all of this with the help of a nutritionist and a lot of work on my part. My physical health started to improve, and I actually squashed type 2 diabetes along the way, which I'm very grateful for. About 6 months out from taking sugar out of my life, I noticed this very interesting emotional phenomenon. My anger was starting to mysteriously evaporate, and I would encounter these situations even when people would make direct personal attacks, and my reaction for the first time in my life was confusion, not anger or rage. And then something else happened that I can only describe as a sensation that felt like a sunbeam on my chest. It felt like a mild heat. I started to experience this regularly when I was in situations with a likelihood for conflict, like a community or a staff meeting. I'd feel this heat on my chest, and then I would somehow find myself joining the discussion. And what was interesting to me was the emotional dynamic of the discussions would change, that de-escalation would happen, and that the conflict would somehow dial back. I'm a person of faith and science, so I wanted to figure out what was going on. I mean, this is the very definition of correlation, not causation, but I didn't know if the heat on my chest had anything to do with diffusing conflict, but the sequence was really regular, and the heat on my chest was a really physical phenomenon. So I wanted to figure out what was going on. So I asked my Western doctor what she thought was going on, and she kind of looked at me like I had 10 heads and changed the subject. I asked my acupuncturist what he thought was going on, and he said, it sounds like the light of God was shining through you in that moment. And I said, that is really beautiful, and that is nice to hear, but that doesn't actually help me understand what's going on. Finally, I asked my massage therapist, a wonderful human being named Marshall, and he said, you know what, it sounds like your parasympathetic nerve system's actually recovering. And I said, what is that? And he explained that there's actually a cluster of nerves in the middle of our chest that's right behind the sternum surrounding our heart. He explained that when we feel stress, our bodies send blood to our vital organs like our hearts, and that maybe my body had healed enough that when I felt stress, my body was actually able to fully respond this way. The blood rushing to my heart and nerves would feel like heat. And I said, this explanation makes sense to me. This was my sign of radical health. And that's actually why I named my coaching practice Radical Health Coaching. I was healed finally enough after years of both putting myself in very stressful situations and then making difficult choices to stay in the stress. And my body was finally appropriately responding rather than just firing up my adrenals and sending me into fight mode. If you burn out, and I guess I tell this story because I was able then to be a force for de-escalation, which is what we are all, I think, called in many ways to do right now. And being healthy in these days is a radical act of resistance. If we burn out, our movement burns out, and we need all hands on deck. I invite you to be brave and think about the radical changes you might need to help you find your stable center, because we are all worthy of living our best lives, even while we are fighting for justice. If we organize from our stable center, we invite others to do the same. And that way we can organize with compassion and love.
Tanya, wow, that was short and powerful. Thank you so much for introducing us to this idea of radical health, and helping us to learn to be a force for de-escalation. As you said, if we burn out, our movement burns out, and so we have a lot of work to do, and we need to put our effort and energy into our own health to stay in this for the long haul, for the long game. So thank you so much again for being with us. Thank you to Rhonda again for leading us in today's meditation. And I'll invite everyone to please share a photo or a word about what's on your mind in the Facebook group to help us come together as this temporary community of like-minded folks seeking to resist burnout and fight for justice together. Thanks so much for being together, and I look forward to being together again next week. Thanks all.